far. I'll keep searching no matter how hard. Mighty memories in an old wrecking yard.
Welcome to the Wrecking Yard. I'm Jerry Wayne Longmire, and y'all are presumably still y'all. All are welcome here in the Church of Internal Combustion. We just ask that you show up with an open heart. Big exciting news. We got some new merch, and you can get it in my online merch store. But we have some new Wrecking Yard specific shirts and some fun stuff like that. And here's a little picture of them if you're interested in that sort of thing. And if you're listening to this on audio, generally when the audio is presented, there's also a link to my link tree that has all my stuff. And in my link tree, there is a link to my merch store uh, over at Bonfire. And of course, we got we got Shop Talk shirts, we got Truck Astrology shirts. We just got Jerry Wayne Live stuff if you're into that. And we have, now we have some Wrecking Yard shirts. So I'm excited about that, and we're looking into getting some hats done and stuff like that. If you're into that sort of thing, you can come trip with us here at the Wrecking Yard. I like that the what is that called? I don't remember what that's called. It's not an acronym, is it? Acronym for the Wrecking Yard podcast is TRIP. That always makes me laugh. It is a balmy Saturday afternoon here in Houston, Texas, about 80 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius for my overseas listeners, but it's hot as shit. No, it's not that bad. It's just a little muggy. We got a rainstorm coming through, but I got all the yard work done yesterday. I'm prepped. I'm ready. We got some new sponsors here this week. I've told you guys about this dude 1,000 times actually, but he's actually a sponsor of the Wrecking Yard this week. Wildlife Removal Experts LLC, my good buddy Tim Moss. Wildlife Removal Experts is a full-service, veteran-owned pest control company in Huntsville, Texas, serving a really large region, including the Houston metropolitan area as well. And I had Tim out. You called Tim, boy. Whether you got termites or chupacabras, call Tim. He'll get you taken care of. You can get a hold of them guys at 832-745-2540. That's 832-745-2540. I had Tim out at my property this week. We have a horrible mosquito problem here, being in the swamp. And I've tried the traps, and I've tried everything, the foggers, all that crap. And Tim, I don't know what kind of magic chemical he has, but he come out here and sprayed it all over my yard and a little bit on my neighbor's yard where they got people next door have a jungle they don't take care of. And we have not had a lick of mosquitoes here, which is a miracle. If you know anything about this place, usually you can't walk from the back door to the car without just getting mobbed. And even over there by the jungle where my car is parked, very little to no mosquitoes. So I'm very happy. Wildlife Removal Experts LLC, Tim Moss. Make sure you call him. Also, sponsoring us this week is the Golden Beard Company. It's a 10-year-old global beard brand specializing in organic natural beard care products out of Denmark. They make I just got a new package from them, some stuff. They make my absolute favorite mustache wax. It's I have a very large mustache, and if you have a very large mustache, you probably get tired of eating it. I know I do. Trying to eat a sandwich with a unit like that, you're going to end up with half of it in your mouth every time. It's crazy as hell. But I like their mustache wax because it's not too like thick, and like it's got enough hold that my mustache stays looking good even under hot stage lights and stuff like that. But it's not so thick that it's like a mess to get out and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just a big fan of the product, and they've wanted to come on board and support the Wrecking Yard podcast, and I really appreciate that out of those guys. You can find all of their beard products at goldenbeard.com. Goldenbeard.com. And yeah, man, if you're into it, I like the fact they don't use a bunch of chemicals, a bunch of other crap in it. We got enough stuff bombarding us on a daily basis. I ain't looking to put extra on my face. Um, there you go, sponsor copy. I am in a particularly good mood. I was supposed to go see one of my favorite country artists right now is a guy named Steven Wilson Jr. And his music has just brought me a lot of joy in the past several months. I've had his album "Son of Dad" on repeat, I think, since January. Uh, it's one of my favorite albums I've heard in a long time. Some of the best music I've heard in a long time, especially out of country. And I'm just a big fan of him. I was supposed to go see him tonight. Unfortunately, his mother was involved in a very serious ATV accident, and I'm glad to hear that she is stable and she's doing better now. But it was kind of touch and go, and they've had to postpone a couple of their shows. One of the shows being the one here in Houston, Texas. So I'm hoping to find out when that show is rescheduled because I am looking forward to doing it. But as a result of that cancellation, my wife was going to go with me to the show, and we have decided that we're still going to go out and have us a fun date night because we do not get very many of those. We don't have much in the way of childcare and much in the way of family left. So it's very rare. But my sweet sister is here visiting for the week and she has offered to watch the kids so we can go have us a night on the town. So we're going to go to Drake's of Hollywood, Drake Hollywood, something like that. Drake Hollywood here in Houston. It's based on some old famous restaurant in LA, but they built one in Dallas. They built one in Houston. So we have reservations for Drake's Hollywood Steakhouse tonight, and I'm looking forward to it. I haven't eaten much all day. I'm drinking this fabulous coffee to keep me going. That is hot. Woo! That's hot coffee. I forgot to set my timer, so we're gonna have to wing this. Come on. All right, timer's going. I have to do that for my audio. Anyways, ooh, yeah. So I'm psyched, man. Get a night out alone with mama that just doesn't happen too often anymore. And I'm also really psyched because we just put a whole bunch of dates on the board. I've picked up some gigs in Colorado. Um, Still working on the Washington stuff. We had to postpone some of that, but I picked up 2 nights in San Antonio in July. And the Punchline, the big comedy club here in Houston, has asked me to come back in July and do 2 shows for them. And I'm pretty excited about that. I had a really great experience at that club the last time I worked there. And there's some more. Oh, May 5th. Man, I shouldn't tell you all the date because I'm not 100% sure. I think it's May 5th. I'm going back to El Reno, Oklahoma, to the Center Theater again, and I'm excited. And they promised me we're going to have more than 20 people this time, even though those 20 people were one hell of a great show. I had a good time with them. I'm going to El Reno, Oklahoma is famous for the onion burger. That's their big deal, and they have a festival every year they call Burger Day, and they cook a giant onion burger in the street or something, and it's a big deal. And a bunch of people come in from out of town for it, and they've got all kind of events going on during the day. And I'm going to go up there and do a show for them that night. So I'm really excited about that. I had a great time at that theater the last time I went. Y'all probably remember my good buddy Barry Laminack, who got me a little project to fuss with here today. This is a piece of yard art that belongs to my wife, and I think it's a dragonfly on a big spring. But it's one of the things that we were having a bunch of high winds recently, and some stuff got damaged. And the dragonfly is one of those. He's lost one of his wings, uh, and she doesn't remember where she got it. So I told her I think I can fix it because I usually think I can fix things, but we'll see if that's a reality or not. It just looks like it was just kind of crimped together. The little wings just got little springs on them. You see here, and then they kind of flap in the breeze, and it adds some whimsy to your garden. Um, my allergies are a little bit of a mess today. Anyways, I'm gonna see if I can fix this thing for her. And I really, it's like they were just kind of crimped in there. It looks like it was one piece, the spring to the wings, and then they were kind of crimped in there, and it looks like it just got a little rusty and broke. So I think what I'm gonna do is clean it up and try to get it back in the crimp and clamp it down, and then I'm gonna take my little wire welder and just a little. This is real thin metal, so I don't want to get it too hot, and them springs will try to come unwound and everything else. Just a little tack, make it a little stronger in the future. Since apparently we live in Tornado Alley now, even though Houston was previously not a part of that. But my lord, we have had a mess of storms. Anyways, let's move on. Today we are talking about one of my favorite car brands of all time. We're talking about Mercury. I love Mercury. I'm a Mercury fan. I will accept them for all their flaws and downfalls. I don't care. I am a Mercury fan. In my mind, one of the finest looking cars that have been made is one of them 49 Mercs with that big old mouth grill. Looks like it just wants to eat up the road. I'm a big fan. To me, that's the original lead sled hot rod. I just think they're so cool. And I have been a big fan of Mercury all my life, although I have never owned a Mercury. Never one time in my life actually owned a Mercury. This, we're going to talk about Mercury a little bit. And we're going to talk about the Cougar, but this is going to be a story about a car that I came this close to owning. It had it ripped away from me at the last minute, but it's a fun time in my life. It's my record driving days in Dallas when I was doing the repos and the towaways, and I was just living chaotic, kind of crazy. And I think you guys will have a good time. Let's start. A lot of people don't realize, but originally they wanted to call the Mustang the Cougar. The T5 concept, which is what became the Mustang and eventually what the Cougar was built off of, uh, was was a project at Ford. But the Cougar, the Mercury Cougar idea was actually around before the Mustang, but it was one of the finalist names. The Cougar was one of the finalist names when they were trying to figure out what to call the Mustang. Powers at B went in another direction in 1964 for the Mustang because they thought the Mustang name symbolized speed more than the Cougar. But I guess they never seen any videos of a cougar chasing something down. I don't know. I mean, Mustang horses are pretty fast, but cougar, you ever seen big cats and how they move? It's crazy, man. Just watch your house cat. That's what a cougar does on a much grander scale. They were encouraged in Mercury because the public bought Mustangs in record numbers. The 1964 Mustang broke every sales record there was. That car sold like crazy. But what they wanted to do with Mercury is they wanted to make a similar size car, but with more. Mercury was always about. It was like, yes, let's give you the hot rod, let's give you the cool car, but let's add a little more style and comfort to it. And that's what the Cougar was supposed to be about. Cougar, in reality, though, the Cougar began well before the Mustang. It was actually known as the T7, and the project was kind of in, like not going anywhere, just sitting, languishing until the 64 Mustang came out. And it sold so many cars. And they said, okay, there actually is a market for this thing, you know. And because they had that Cougar nameplate sitting there, they just started calling the T7 the Mercury. But the engineers got excited because of how well the Mustang sold. The engineers were like, "Oh crap! We knew this was a good idea. Nobody believed this, but now, the bean counters are behind it. The bean counters get behind anything. If anything like something sells, the bean counters get behind it, and that's exactly what happened. When the design was finalized in 1965, they kind of positioned it as as a man's car that the Mustang owner could step up to. It was basically, the Mustangs were selling really well with the young population, but they were looking at, your 25 to 35-year-old men. This was a car that, yeah, you still got all the horsepower of the Mustang and the performance, but now you can ride in style a little bit, some power windows and stuff like that. Sorry, I got a lot of notes here. I went on a deep dive reading about this and writing about it. Let me see here. Yeah, so when they first put the brought the Cougar in 1966, when they brought it out in California and did all their media previews and everything, they were hoping to hit like 85,000 sales, which would have been nowhere near the Mustang launch figures, but that's still a huge number in 1966 on an initial offering. And they had high hopes for the Cougar. The Cougar in its first model year sold in excess of 150,000 units. And also, Cougar's the number one selling car Mercury ever had for like 35 years. Big appeal, of course, behind the Cougar was its looks. It looked like a Mustang, but meaner. It had those crazy headlight covers and everything else, and it just had a little different. It had a little more a subtle, aggressive look to it. I remember that's when I was a kid. I remember this, and I wasn't a kid in the '60s, but I was a kid in the '80s, and if you saw a Mercury dealership, it was all about that cat, boy. All about that cat. I had a Cougar hood emblem off, I think, like a '77 for a long time. That I never. It's probably still here in my box of junk somewhere. I always thought I was going to do something cool with it, and I never did. But I always thought those hood emblems were cool on those mid '70s ones. Of course, if you're a fan of the car, one of the most distinguishing features, looks wise, was the hideaway headlights, the little vacuum headlight hideaways. And if you've seen very many of them, you've seen a lot of them that didn't work. Or my favorite ones are ones that get stuck with one, where one eye opens and one doesn't. Always makes me laugh. One of my favorite parts about the Cougar, especially from those year models, is the sequential turn signals in the tail lights. And I also like them barred tail lights. It matched the front of the car to me. To me, it made the car feel more the early Mustangs with the round headlights and the vertical tail lights. That was always a little off to me. But with the Cougar, you had that barred look at the front, that barred look at the back. It kind of reminded me a little bit of a Dodge Challenger, a little bit. And I really always like that look a whole lot. I still think those late '60s Cougars are some of the best looking cars that come out of that era. It had a 3-inch longer wheelbase. This is some of the tech stuff I might have. It was a few. It had a 3-inch longer wheelbase, and it had like the XR-7 was just a trim package. It stood for experimental racing, but it was just a trim package, and it had like a little overhead console and some extra goodies in it, but it didn't have anything extra performance in it. XR7 Cougar didn't mean anything about performance, even though it was, based off the XR stood for experimental racing. Had a much better suspension setup though, and they rode better. And I've driven a couple of them, and you can tell the difference. The Cougar and the Mustang do not drive alike. The '67 models utilized popular 289 V8 engine offered in three versions. and they had the 390 Marauder big block, which is the old FE. The the engine choices got even better in '68. They had 302s, 427, 428 Cobra jet engines. The big thing about the Cobra was you could get that 427, you couldn't get that 427 in a Mustang, and that was a big deal. And the 428 Cobra jet engines were, legendary. They're incredible engines. In 1969, they added the 351 Windsor, which I don't really care about that engine, but a lot of people like hot rodding them. They were really not some of my favorites, to be honest with you. I just never was really a fan of 351 Windsor. I ain't never had nothing but bad luck out of one. Cougar I'm going to tell y'all about today was a 67 XR-7 Cougar, and it was green. Had the XR-7 trim package, had a 390, had the 390 in it. I don't know. The thing is, I don't know if it was the original 390 or if it's one somebody had put in it. But my guess is, at the time period that I found it, it was probably the original 390, especially based on what I found out about the engine as I started messing with the car. But this is when I was working for vehicle removal company in Dallas, Texas, and I was doing repos and towaways with my buddy Fish. I've told y'all some stories about him. And I had been at the company for a little while at this point and had kind of figured out my footing. I'd kind of figured out the business. I'd had some good training from some of the guys, and you know, I was towing some cars. I was moving some cars. Not good. Oh, thing is so rusted. But I was also living wild at this time. I'd like to tell y'all I was better, but I wasn't. I was doing a lot of drugs, and I was running around with strippers, and I even got my tongue pierced at some point because I was just living like a crazy person. This girl I was running around with, she thought it was hot, and so I got it done and regretted it immediately. But sometimes you just do dumb stuff like that. I've got a couple tattoos I wish I hadn't gotten. Not because I'm against tattoos, but they were just stupid tattoos at the time. Didn't have any meaning to them. Nowadays, I tend to be a little more thoughtful about the process before I do anything like that. I'm gonna have him on the show. My tattoo artist, real good buddy of mine, Randy Lee from my childhood. I think I told y'all a little bit about him last week, but I've probably told you some other stuff about him along the way. Randy did my Jaybird for me, and me and Randy are working on an idea. Well, he doesn't know we are yet, but I am going to do a sleeve on my left arm that is going to be all wrecking yard themed, and we're going to have basically that. Anyways, there's going to be some artwork here about the wrecking yard, and then all the cars from the first season of the wrecking yard. I want them compiled in a wrecking yard up and down my arm with some special little symbolism for my papa and some of the people that made me who I am over the years, even old Mr. Jim. Okay, so there's a piece of that still broke off in there. I don't know if I can get that out. That sucks. Well, I wish I had the eyes I had back when I was in my 20s driving them records. I could see this mess a whole lot better. Got the thing that broke right off in there. I might be able to pry a little piece of it off. Well, I knew I had me a little flat blade here. There we go. At the time, Me and Fish was living over in Cockrell Hill. Well, not Cockrell. Yeah, I guess you call it Cockrell Hill. It's off Loop 12 and Jefferson and Davis and Dallas. Kind of a rough neighborhood, but if you knew the right people and you played by the rules, it wasn't a terrible place to be. I liked being in that little neighborhood. I had a lot of friends there. The house we lived in, I was pretty sure was haunted. It was kind of wild. Growing up living in Houston, we didn't have you don't have a lot of houses down here with basements because the sea level. Boy, that is just not going to go in there. I might have to get radical with that. I might have to cut that open with a grinder. Do that on the show. All right. Well, maybe next week I'll show you all the dragonfly when I get it fixed. I was pretty sure that house we lived in was haunted. It was an old 2-story house over there in an old neighborhood. I think the house was built in the 60s. It had a big old circular driveway. I've told you some stories about like when the FBI came and busted the guys next door, the SWAT team. And the house had like 3 or 4 bedrooms, and Fish had the primary bedroom. He was the primary person on the lease, and then I had one of the other bedrooms upstairs. But the house had a basement, and I wasn't used to basement houses because I primarily had lived in Houston. There's not a lot of basements in Houston, on account of the fact that we're below sea level about half the year. Seems like. Also, if you know anything about Houston, it floods here a lot. Basements, piss poor idea. We have some of the worst soil composition in the United States. It's not the kind of place you want to dig a basement and try to set concrete forms. Even though back when I had my business, I got called on several houses to do basement water sealing and stuff. These houses that had been built in Houston, old houses. One of them had an underground casino. One house was built in the 20s, had an underground casino in it. And we went in there and tried to seal that basement up. And I did that job. I think I charged them people like $16,000 to do that job. And in the next course of 7 months, I went back out there 22 more times to reapply water sealing. I think when it was all said and done, I made about $200 on that job. And then I quickly told my business partner, "No more basements. We don't do basements anymore," because that was just a pain. But this house in Dallas over there in Cockrell Hill had a basement in it. And the problem is the basement was where all the electric box and all that stuff was, all the breakers and everything. And me and Fish, neither one of us wanted to go in that basement. We were both kind of spooky people in the basement. It was a room with a stair. It was a door with a staircase going downstairs, and we just sort of pretended like it didn't exist. I know I went down to that basement one time and I could have swore I heard somebody down there with me. I was getting creeped. I had to flip a breaker, and you had to stand in just about ankle deep water and try to flip breakers, which is already a little bit of a Hunger Games scenario, as it will. May the odds be ever in your favor. I went down there and flipped the breakers, got the lights back on, and I started coming back up the staircase, and it had a floating ceiling. And so some of those ceiling tiles were missing, those acoustic tiles were missing. And I come walking up that stairs. I already felt like somebody was down that basement with me. I don't like messing around with haints and stuff like that. And I had my little flashlight, and this is before everybody had mag lights. These are your little plastic Walmart push button flashlight. And I looked up at that ceiling tile, and a raccoon stuck its head out of that ceiling tile at me, and I damn near destroyed most of the staircase trying to get my big ass up that staircase and out of that basement. Lost my flashlight, and that flashlight just got left to the basement. I just you just have to replace that one. That flashlight's gone forever, and I never went back in that basement of that house again. But that's where we were living at the time. That's when I had a 2000 model Ford with the V10 in it and the dynamic, rip away bed. And I also had this was after I'd already bought that 77. I had a 77 four-wheel drive Suburban with a manual transmission. That was a fun little beast to roll around Dallas in. And I had a little side hustle. I was going around unlocking cars, doing stuff like Papa Lock business and getting people's car keys out of their cars and stuff for that at the clubs late at night when I would get done towing. And I was running around with a couple gals. This Tori had just come into the picture. Me and her were running around together. We weren't like, you know, me and her yet. We were just sort of. She was a girl that came over to my house a couple nights a week back then. But she wasn't. She definitely wasn't staying there, and we weren't like living together or anything like that. There was still a couple other gals I was talking to here and there. You know how it is when you're young and just having a good time, trying to figure out what you want out of life. And wasn't sure she was what I wanted. And I wish I'd stuck to that, but did not. But I was towing cars like crazy, man. I was trying to make bank. I had finally, to me, after spending so much of my life working like hourly wages and stuff like that, working for other people. Well, granted, doing the tow business, I was still working for other people, but because you leased your truck and you controlled your own hours, it felt a little more like working for yourself. And it was the first opportunity I'd ever had in my life that I could just really bank, that I could just go at it as hard as I wanted to work was as much money as I could make. And as much powder as I could put up my nose to keep me awake long enough was as much money as I could make. And it's not a good business model, I will tell you that. There's a crash coming. But I was also starting to become friends with the people. I had learned the rule. There's a learning curve when you get in that business because you'll tow some cars and you'll have to give them back for free because it wasn't a clear enough violation. And I had learned the rules of how to do it legally and not. There was a lot of scammy guys. Look, they ran around with a piece of carpet, looked like a fire lane. They'd rolled under a car, take a picture with a fuzzy camera, say the cars. There's guys doing all kind of crap like that, but VRC didn't really tolerate a lot of that. They were kind of a corporate company, and they didn't want that look about them. So they were a little more serious. Guys like that generally worked for other companies in the area. They didn't really tolerate a lot of that over at VRC. And then I seen them run dudes off for it left and right. Guys they hired from other companies. So I wasn't doing. And the guy that really taught me the most about it was a young dude, and he was a rule follower, and he didn't like giving cars back for free. So he had taught me a lot of good practices, and I just didn't want to screw people. I wasn't out to screw people. That wasn't the deal. We were just out to get the repeat offenders. Luckily, the properties I worked, there was plenty of repeat offenders. There's plenty of people who just didn't give a shit. They'd park in a handicapped spot, didn't give a crap about nobody else, that kind of stuff. There's plenty of people. A lot of those properties were such low scale properties that there was a lot of abandoned cars. People got evicted, kicked out, left their cars there. Car didn't work, car was inoperable, yada yada yada. So we spent a lot of time just towing inoperable cars. And those you could get paid on every time. You didn't have to give the car back. Plus, the company liked those because the company, every 90 days when a certain number of cars have been sitting on the lot that were abandoned, the company would do auctions, a little public, well, it was like an auto auction. You had pretty much have a dealer's license or whatever to get in there and buy, or you had to have an automotive shop or a salvage license or whatever it was at the time to get in there to that auction. We'd have about 50 or 60 dudes show up to them auctions and buy all them cars up. So the company liked that. It was a good money maker. And like I said, them little ragged ass properties I was towing off of. There's lots of abandoned cars, dude. Lots of stolen cars too. Every once in a while, you have to give one back because it's stolen. You go tow a stolen car, bring it back to the lot, and then DPD or Garland police would show up a couple days later. That car's part of the investigation. You got to give that one back. You don't get paid on them. But I mean, you can't possibly know that when you go to tow a car in the middle of the night. But I was having fun. I was having a good time. I was hanging out with some derelicts after work and running around with some cute girls. And I was just towing cars and I was making money. I was putting some money in my pocket. It felt good to have a little money. You know, it was felt good. Felt good to feel like you were in control of your own destination a little bit. Just hard as I wanted to work was the amount of money I could make. And being the guy I am and the car guy I am, I always kept an eye out for interesting cars. Occasionally, especially if you worked at BRC, the owner would let you buy directly from the auction. You had to wait the 90 days and everything for the car to come up for auction, but the owner would let you buy directly from the auction before they actually did the auction. So we could get some good deals on stuff. I bought a little Chevy van for like $600 and changed the distributor on it and sold that Chevy van for like $1,500, and it was a good deal for the guy that bought it. It was a good deal for me. I walked away with some money on it and everything. I, of course, cleaned it up, did some work on it. I think I put some used tires on it or whatever, but it was just an abandoned vehicle. And you had some problems, man. I mean, don't get me wrong. I ran into some crazy situations. My truck had been shot up a couple times and stuff. Like we'd had people pull guns on us, and people threaten violence. I had one old boy give me a pretty good run for my money, whoop on me pretty good, and I can't even be mad because it was a fair fight. The guy was literally my size. He was just meaner than I was. He whooped my ass. I didn't get that car. You had some of those nights where you go out there and you came home empty handed. There wasn't very many of them, but there was a couple. But I was probably running 6 to 7 nights a week. And at the same time, but right around this time, my Papa Longmire had a stroke, and he wasn't doing good recovering from a stroke. And so I was driving back and forth to Kilgore. I would go up there, go Kilgore, see my dad, but they were all up there dealing with Papa. And it was about at that time my Papa Longmire died, and I think it's like early 2001. I was in Florida. Good Lord, these timelines are tricky. You get this old. I think it's around 2001. I could be wrong about that. I'm blowing and going, living that Dallas nightlife. I'm out shooting pool, having a good time, chasing women, just enjoying my youth. You know, I wish I hadn't been putting all them drugs up my nose I was doing, but I was doing a little bit of that. Funny enough, I didn't drink back then, but boy, I like that booger sugar. It kept me going. And one of these nights, I was over there towing cars, and I was off. This was a neighborhood up in Plano, Texas. We had a secondary office in Plano, and we had a couple of accounts up in Plano. And I mainly was the guy that ran those accounts in Plano because I was the only driver they had that really reported in and out of that Plano office. And well, it was some little old ratty apartment complex on the edge of Plano. And I was cruising through there in my truck one night, radio going, looking for a car to tow. And the property had sent me a little list. They said there's a green Mercury Cougar. There's a couple old square. I don't know how many of them old square body trucks I hauled off back then. People were abandoning them all the time back then. And there were some other cars. There's a little Toyota on there. And she said she had personally stickered these cars. They've been sitting there over 90 days. They wanted them towed away. And I went into that little property at night. Of course, I found that little Toyota, and I found one of the pickup trucks they were talking about. And so I went ahead and towed that Toyota and that pickup truck. I ran them back over to the Plano lot and dropped them off, which was kind of like a holding lot for us. Then I went back over that neighborhood. There was a little Mazda pickup, but man, I had to dolly it because all four wheels were flat, and it was a pain. That it took me like an hour or two. So it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning before I get back over to this neighborhood. I'm cruising through there. It's quiet. It's not one of the neighborhoods. It's not one of the areas where we had a lot of problems. It's just mostly people trying to make ends meet and that kind of stuff. Low end apartment complex. I'm looking for these other cars on the list. I'm not finding them. It was about 5 or 6 cars. I'm not finding the rest of them. Because a lot of times they sticker them. People would go, they would pay attention to the due date and move the car so they can get it towed or whatever. And off in the back corner by the dumpster, I see this dirty ass. I mean, that Mercury looked like it must have been sitting there 10 years. I don't know. It was dirty. You couldn't even see through the windshield. The registration sticker had been out for well over 5 years. All 4 tires were flat. It was just sitting there. But when I got up close to it, and it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, I got my flashlight and I get up close to it and looking at it, I was like, "Holy, that's a damn Mercury Cougar!" Like that's a Cougar. I've always liked these cars. I've always thought they're cool. I'm a Mustang guy. Of course, I like Cougars. I get up closer and I'm realizing I see the headlights, the hideaway headlights and everything. Like, dude, this is like, and I wasn't as knowledgeable then as I am now, but I knew it was like a late '60s Mercury Cougar. And the deal for me was is I took a little rag out of the shop and I just wiped it down the back fender just to see, and the paint underneath that dirt and shit from sitting out there in the back of an apartment complex looked good. It still had like a little metallic sparkle to it. I was like, what the, even under a flashlight in the dark, I was like, oh shit. Well, I had a little air compressor on my truck, so I took an air compressor and I was able to air up uh I was able to air up one of the front tires and one of the back tires. So I decided that I would pull it out in the lot, and I pulled it next door. There was a empty parking lot, and a lot of times truck drivers would park there. And so I just pulled it over there with flat tires so I could jack with it. And I lifted it up and I took the front tire off that wouldn't hold any air and stuck it on the back, and took the back tire that would hold air and stuck it on the front. Of course, they were all mismatched tires. And I got those 2 front tires hold air. So I turned around, picked that Cougar up from the back, and I said, "Boy, I ain't going. This is a car I'd like to buy if it comes up for auction." Because I already had sights set on this car. I hadn't even tried to re-dirty up the part I'd wiped off, so nobody else decided they wanted it. I said, "Boy, I'd like to have this one." So I was unlocked. Didn't even have to jack with the locks. Got in there. The interior needed some work. The seats, leather seats, were ripped and crap like that, and kind of stuff you expect. The headliner was jacked up, hanging down several places, but the dash looked good. The little overhead console looked good. It was XR-7, so it had all those extras. Popped the hood, I could tell that it had. I mean, it looked like the old big block out of my old Ford truck, so I knew it was big block, and I was excited about that. I didn't know a lot about it yet. It was automatic. Man, I already had plans. I was like, well, I'd like to have this damn car. So instead of taking it to the Plano lot, I decided I would wrap up my night. I'd already towed about 6 cars that night, which is a pretty good paycheck for the night. I said, "Boy, I tell you what I do. I'll drive this car. I'll drag this car all the way back over to Dallas, to the Dallas lot, and I'll put it in the Dallas lot. And then I'll keep an eye on it as auction time comes up." Sure enough, boy, I come over there, dropped it off the Dallas lot, turned in my ticket, went back home, tried to get some sleep after being up all night. You know how that goes. But I remember I was laying there in my bed. I kept thinking about that Cougar. I kept thinking, I was like, "Boy, I really want that car, man." I started imagining what it'd be like to have that little car just drive around every day. And boy, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So next night when I went in up to the office, I went in a little early because the owners would be there during the day. And one of the owners and me got along really well. So went and talked to him. I said, I brought in this abandoned car last night, and I'm real interested in it. I'd like to buy it out of the auction. And he said, "Well, we can work out a deal." He said, "Let's go out there and take a look at it." So I walked him out there, and I'm worried the whole time I'm walking him out there because this guy liked classic cars. as any good car guy does. And I'm worried, like, man, I messed up. I probably shouldn't have said nothing about this car because now he's going, you know. And I walk him out there to look at this car, and he gets looking at it, and he said, boy, that's a the body's all straight on it. That's a pretty clean old Cougar. I'm worried, man. The whole time this dude, he's admiring the car. He sees through the dust. He knows what's sitting there. He said, "Boy, it take a little work to get that thing up and going, but that's a clean looking Cougar." I'm not much of a Ford guy myself, and when he said I'm not much of, I've never been so happy in my life. Hear somebody say I ain't much of a Ford guy. I was like, "God, thank you, Jesus. Don't be a Ford guy. Just break your heart. Save this Ford for me." He said, "Boy," he said, "I tell you what." He said, "Jerry," he said, "we got to wait the 90 days." He said, "But if you follow along," he said, "I'll give you his car for $800." Which, we're talking about early 2000s. Car prices were different back then, so try not to flip out and go gaga. $800 was a little bit more money in 2001 than it is now. But he said, "I'll give you the car for $800." But that felt fair to me. And I said, "Do you mind if I mess with it a little bit while it's sitting there in the lot? I'm pretty sure nobody's coming to get it. This car's been abandoned. It's been sitting over in this apartment complex for a long time. I just finally got around to her abandoned list and started towing them." And I told him what account it was and everything. He said, "Yeah." He said, "Just don't make a big fuss of it in front of me." I said, "Well, no, I ain't gonna make a big fuss. One of these other guys will want the damn car then." So I knew I was going to have to do that stuff off work hours. I was going to have to kind of come up there during the daytime when none of the other drivers were there and mess around with it. But I was overjoyed, man. I went out and I was towing cars that night, and every car I towed that night, I thought, "Oh, that's money for my Cougar, baby. That's money for my Cougar. Money in the bank. Gonna get me a Cougar." Every car I towed, boy, it just in my eyes, that was money going towards that Cougar I was gonna get. Boy, I was already daydreaming about fixing that son 50 up and rolling into Kilgore like a big shot baby in that green Cougar, just showing that thing off. I was a big fan of that car already. And I'm often romantic about cars and idealistic for sure, especially back in them days. But I had high hopes that guy. I was already in love with it. I was already in love with what all I thought that car could be. And we'll give that just a few minutes. See, this is why I like to start my timer now. Now I don't know when my audio is going to run out on me. Coffee's still hot as hell. How is that possible? I was excited. I was damned excited. So excited. In fact, that night I remember I worked till like 3 or 4 in the morning that night towing cars. I went and Tori came over to the house and we bumped and ground, did our thing, and then I kind of run her out of the house like 9 o'clock in the morning. I was like, "I got stuff to do today. Sorry, I got stuff to do. I got something on my mind. I got another lady on my mind. She's a Cougar. I gotta go see her." And so I ran over there to VRC, took my little toolbox with me, and I was in my little Suburban, and I had parked it down. So there was in the lot. We're constantly bringing cars in and out of this lot, and they had this guy that worked there during the day that couldn't get a. I think he didn't have a driver's license. This dude was. There was a couple chapters stuck together in his book. Okay. Uh, but they didn't let him drive a wrecker outside the property. Boy, he did during the day was organize the cars and stuff as cars were coming up for auction. He would pull them over to the auction lot and get them ready and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of keep the yard organized as he was told. But what was it dude's name? I cannot remember. I think it was Darren. It was Darren Lee, one of them rednecky names. Darren Lee, Delbert Lee, some shit like that. Derek Lee. I don't even remember. It's one of those, just dude. He was from Duncanville, bro. If that tells you, if you know anything about DFW, this guy was from Duncanville. That's where the prizes came from, and he was off, and that was So he would be the only guy there during the yard during the day, and he had this old they had this old retired early '80s brick nose, I mean bull nose Ford wrecker unit, sling unit, and he would use that to move the cars around. And they had a little forklift out there they could use too. And I had parked this so the busiest three rows of the lot were all up front because that's where the drivers come in, drop, they want to go get another car. I had very purposely taken this car back off to the corner of the lot, up closest to where the shop was, because nobody really like it was kind of a tedious drive to drive the wrecker up and down all those roads to get to that part of the lot to drop something off. And so what sat up there was cars that didn't sell well in auction and some of the old junkers that they just ended up having sitting around. And I had backed it off in there, off in the weeds, and I had plans on it already. I had hidden it. I went up there with my tools and took the ignition switch apart and pulled the ignition out of the steering column so I could get my hands on the ignition switch and just bump it over and mess with it. And of course, battery on it was no good. The car had been sitting for a long time. When I popped the hood and got up under there, the battery, I don't even think they made those style of batteries anymore. That's how old the battery was in this car. But it had some weird inconsistencies. It had a new distributor in it, like a replacement Ford distributor in it, and it had all new plug wires, and it had an aftermarket carburetor. It had an Edelbrock carburetor on it, sitting on that was bolted to the original FE intake. It had this aftermarket Edelbrock carburetor on it. But then they had shoved the factory air cleaner on top of it, but it didn't really fit that carburetor right. So it was just kind of sitting on there loose. So I would, the battery was dead. So, but I had a jump box at the time, so I stuck the jump box off in there, hooked the jump box up to the lead. And I remember I turned that ignition switch on, and of course the headlight hideaways didn't work. The vacuum lines are all brittle, and you got to replace all that crap to get all those things working. They were a pain in the ass. Anybody that's ever had vacuum operated headlight covers, a Fiero or anything like that can tell you about it. They're an absolute nightmare. And you're better off just replacing every vacuum line there is if you want it to work. And so, of course, none of that worked. But the headlights would come on, and all the lights in the dash came on. I think it said it had like 60,000 miles on it, which is high mileage for a '60s car, back then, because people didn't run them that long. Started cleaning up I'd taken some rags with me and started wiping down the interior. I wasn't going to clean up the outside of the car because I didn't want anybody, like I said, to know I had a thing for this car yet, because then we end up with a damn bidding war, who's trying to have that. But I started cleaning up the interior, and there was a box for the Edelbrock carb in the back seat, and there was a box for the spark plug wires, and there was a damn Chilton manual for the car that looked like it'd been underwater. The pages were all wavy and brittle and yellow, smelled like an old car manual, grease and despair. Got the hood, got the trunk popped on it, went through the back, popped the back seat down and got off into the trunk and got the trunk open on it, and still had the jack and all the original spare tire stuff. It was cool, man. The car was pretty original. I fussed with it a little bit that day and went on back to the house, got some sleep, went back out to work that night. And 2 or 3 days a week, I would go up there and mess with his car a little bit during the day when nobody else was there. You know what I mean? Go up there and just check out what was on it. And over the course of the months, I I figured out some things about the car. I got it to turn over. So when I got it to turn over, I couldn't get it to fire, but I got it to turn over. And then digging around to that Chilton manual, I basically figured out that it had a 390. I found out that it was a 390, which was the 390 Marauder, which is a pretty tough OFE engine, and one I was pretty familiar with. But turning it over, I realized that the oil in it was just chunky, but I didn't want to put no new. That's the kind of thing somebody noticed, doing an oil change out there or whatever. You don't want to go that far yet. Car ain't yours yet. But I basically figured out the dude had the firing order wrong, got all the spark plug wires were mismatched and everything. Who knows why the car ended up sitting there? I'm sure it was somebody working on it and was trying to get it run to use it for a daily driver, is basically what I can figure out. But they just didn't really know what they were doing. They were just slapping parts on it and weren't getting anywhere with it because, like I said, they had the firing order. Basically, they had tried to run the spark plugs off a Chevrolet 350 firing order, and everything was screwed up. And so I screwed around with it and everything, got the firing order right, got the plug set up right. I remember I called my dad a couple times. He talked me through it. And like when I go back to the house at night, I had a cousin who worked at a dealership as a mechanic too. And I would call him and ask him questions. And he worked for a Mercury dealership. So he knew, he could look up old service stuff and tell me all kind of goodies. He was the guy that really knew the most about it. And I got the firing order right. And the first time I got the firing order right, it fired up and it ran for about 20 seconds and shut off and wasn't getting enough fuel. And I said, oh, so I went out there messing around with some of them other old junk cars. I kept messing with every time I would go up there during the days. I was messing with that Edelbrock carburetor because I saw that shiny new chrome carburetor, and I thought this is a great carburetor. I already have this on this car, but I never could get that Edelbrock. I never could get it to do right for me. I get the car run for a few seconds, whatever, and then it have fuel problems and shut off. And luckily, there was about a 70 model Ford van out there. It had a damn Autolite carburetor on it. So I went over there one day, and of course, asked the owner. He said he didn't care. It was an old junk van, so I took that Autolite off that van and cleaned it, took it apart, put a kit in it. And I did put a little money in the little kit and cleaned that Autolite carburetor up and put it on there. And boy, lo and behold, that car would run. It wasn't idle worth a damn, but it run. But it was also up on further inspection. I found that there was some water off in the block, so it either had a cracked head gasket. I mean, failed head gasket or a cracked head, maybe even possibly a cracked block. But we were getting there was a little bit of water and oil, not a lot, but there's a little bit. And you're getting it out the exhaust and everything. Of course, the exhaust was all rusted and rotten out on the bottom of that car just from sitting. It looked like it was pretty much the factory exhaust. Took a while to fit. The wiring was somebody had been into the wiring, doing all kind of crazy shit with the wiring up and down the steering column, and I had most of the steering column taken apart, messing with that wiring. And the driver's door wouldn't stay shut on the car. There was something wrong with the latch, and the driver's door wouldn't stay shut on the car. So what I had done is I had rigged up a piece of clothes hanger in that latch. I would get out of the car. I was get out the passenger side of the car after I was messing with it. But I had rigged up a piece of wire I could hook up in there and it would keep that door shut. And I figured, once I got the car was mine, I'd take that door all apart, figure that latch out, get me a replacement latch out of the junkyard or something, get that all fixed up. But I was falling in love with this car. I was at least a couple days a week. I was up there daydreaming and messing with this car. And once I got that thing running, I was like, boy, even if it's got a cracked head or head gasket, them FE engines were still easy to find parts for at that time. You could still find parts for them everywhere. I could got a set of heads out wrecking yard, got them reworked, or found out I had a cracked block. I could have replaced the engine realistically, pretty inexpensively back then. Not inexpensively, but wouldn't have been a deal breaker. The rest of the car was so clean. I mean, all the body was straight. It had all the trim except on the passenger side, the trim on the door was missing. The chrome trim and stuff off the door was missing, which just age or something like that, or got knocked off or something. But it didn't have any dents. It wasn't like it'd been in a wreck. I couldn't wait to see what that car was going to look like clean. I was just so excited about it, and I had already, over the course of a month or two, I had my little extra $800 set aside, and then I had my little building fund going, and I was going to put some money in this car once I got it back over to the house in Dallas. Had me a little tire money set aside. And I had plans, man. I was going to do some fine cruising this Mercury. Now, even if you bought a car through the auction from the owner, but like if he let you buy one out in front of the auction, it still had to go get listed in the auction. It still had to get moved over to the auction lot. And this is where old stupid ass Darren, Derek, whatever his name was, comes into play. Coming up on those 90 days, of course, all kind of other things have happened in my life since then. My grandfather's died. This is after. No, this is before I got beat up, chained to my record. This is before I got in that little situation. But there's crazy stuff. Tori's basically kind of living with me at this point. Me and Fish are arguing a little bit, but some things have happened. But I'm still with them, and I'm still excited about this car. It's really at this point it's gotten to be where it's all I can think about, man. I done all my real me and Fish have done talked about the car. I got a spot where I'm gonna bring it. I done talked to my neighbor I hang out with all the time. We done been talking about the car. I'm psyched about it, man. I didn't talk to my dad about this car. I'm gonna get this Mercury Cougar, 67 Mercury Cougar XR-7. I got plans. I'm gonna rebuild the vacuum stuff and get the headlights working, get it all detailed out, get that old 390 roaring. I've sat there and daydreamed about what all I'm gonna do in this car, the miles of country I'm gonna drive by in this Mercury. Crazy about a Mercury. Isn't that the Alan Jackson song? I mean, I know he's talking about a 49, but I'm singing that song thinking about a 67, baby. I got plans about all the highfalutin driving I'm gonna do in this Mercury Cougar, how I'm gonna show out when I come into town riding in this fine, fine automobile. That old dude worked in the yard. I'm telling you, he was dumb as a box of rocks, man. I've never met, he did all the stuff around the yard. He cleaned the toilets, he did all that stuff, but he just wasn't a smart human being. And it's one thing. Look, I'm never mean to somebody who's just ignorant. Like some people just haven't given the opportunity to learn. But then there's some people who are dumb and they just never miss an opportunity to show you how dumb they are. And they're usually loud. Usually the louder they are, the dumber they are. And this is one of those days. He had an opinion on everything. He thought he knew a little something about everything. And we all just kind of listened to him bump his gums because nobody really cared what he thought because he was the yard guy. He was this dipshit that couldn't even keep a license to drive a wrecker. Nobody really paid attention to the guy. And the problem is when you have somebody that's dumb in that way, they're often a dickhead too. And this guy he just would go out of his way to be an ass. I can remember so many times having to go in the office and argue over damages on towed cars that this guy did to the cars because he just was careless and didn't give a shit. And he'd go out there and tear cars up in the lot, hit a car with that old wrecker and not tell anybody about it. And then when the people come pick up the car that was like a towed or impounded car, they'd come after the driver that picked up the car for damages. And I'd go like, no, here's my. It's why we were all real good about taking pictures of these cars we brought to the lots. I had my little crap ass digital camera. I took pictures of every car I brought in that lot because I got screwed on damages a couple of times because let's call him Darren. Old Darren Lee has screwed us on damages a couple of times. He's just dumb, you know. And I know that the owners knew who was doing a lot of the damage out there. I don't know why they kept the guy around. I always assumed he was related to somebody. And I had just seen him tear up all kinds of stuff out there, and I should have seen it coming. I should have seen it coming. I should have been more proactive. But it come time for him to move that car over in the auction lot. And I went up there that morning, and there was dumbass old Darren was off in that car, and he had that driver's door open, and he was off in that car, He's like, somebody got the steering column all messed apart. And da, da, da. I said, yeah. I said, Darren, I've already, so me and Darren already butted heads a couple times over some damage claims. And I said, yeah, Darren, I'm buying the car from the auction. I've been over here messing with it, see what all I need to do to it after I get it. And of course, it needs all kind of work. Wiring's all messed up and all that kind of stuff. He's like, you want to put the clothes hanger on the door? I was like, yeah, the door doesn't stay shut. I didn't want it to get damaged or come open and hit another car or something like that, and get the door damaged because the door's in pretty good shape. So I rigged that up. I said, man, when you get ready to tow a car, make sure you put that clothes hanger back on there and keep that door shut. And he's like, I'm not stupid. You're the only person around here. You're just one of these morons. Somebody already always got something to say, but it's never anything of value. Well, I'd have to be pretty stupid to leave that door. Okay, Darren. Well, just do me a favor, man. Make sure. He said, "Well, I do favors a lot better when there's a reason to do a favor." And I ended up giving him like $20. I was like, "Man, here's $20, bro. Just put the thing back on there. Make sure the door's closed before you tow that car over to the auction lot." Yeah, man, that's what I'm talking about. All right. Morning, the car's being moved over to the auction lot. I've been over there already messing with Darren. I get a phone call. My pager goes off about 2 o'clock that afternoon. The auction's not going to happen till the next day. I can't come pick the car up till the next morning, and it's from the owner. The owner of the company has paged me. I call up there. He said, "Man, Jerry, I don't know if you're gonna want this car now. There's been an accident. Darren wrecked the car." Man, you got to be damn kidding me. Jumping the wrecker, haul ass up there. And Darren drug that car out of that spot. Didn't put the clothes hanger back on the door to hold the door shut. And then he picked up the car with the wheel lift from the back end and went to swing the car around here. And they were always getting on to him about driving too fast a lot and all that stuff. And when he took off from around that lot, I told you there was that old junk van that was sitting over there. That door swung open, caught that van. Darren hit the gas, kept going, peeled the front door all the way backwards until it smashed into the front fender and tore the hood and the fender up. Even tore it up to enough point, part of the grill was hanging out of the front of the car. And when it got hung up too bad, rather than backing up and trying to figure out what kind of damage he'd done, he hit the gas again and pulled harder until it turned the car up on its side and damaged the fenders on the other side of the car. And the damn wheel swing on the back had the bumper all twisted. The car was totaled. He managed this inbred. I swear, man, he like to do that much damage to a car in what was probably about 15 minutes was insane. I was like, no, I don't want the car now. I wanted the car when it had a clean body. The car ain't worth $200 now. What the hell? The car's scrap metal. It ain't like now. Now somebody take that car and probably go through it because it's worth it. But back then it wasn't. Even fixed up, that was a $2,000 car. No, I don't want the car now. Boy, this moron. I was like, you're going to run this dude off or what? And he's like, well, he don't cost us much money and everything. I was like, he just cost you money right here. Yeah, we'll sell it for scraps. Not a big deal. We already got paid on that car. They didn't care. It wasn't really money out of their pocket. I was like, at that point, I was sure he was related to some idiot that was working there. I just couldn't figure out who, if it's one of the dispatchers, or what. But he was somebody's family member that couldn't get a job anywhere else doing anything else. I went over there. I was like, "Boy, I want that damn $20 back since you didn't put that door." "I already spent the $20, man. It's not my fault. Not my fault. I don't know why you so worked up about that piece of shit anyway." I wanted to beat the piss out of this dude, but I ain't trying to get fired in the company lot. But boy, I started having bad feelings about old Darren. Mm. I wanted to get this guy back. I had plans. I was trying to figure out every way possible to get this idiot fired. I was so pissed at this dude. And the funny thing is, about a week later, I got fired. I spent all week plotting how to get this dude fired. Then I got fired a week later. I was still kind of young, and I got in an accident in my truck, and it raised the insurance too much, and they cut me loose. And it wasn't even a big accident. It was a little fender bender I got in, but the owner was like, "Yeah, I can't afford to insure you no more." And so I went to work for one of them ghetto companies called North Texas Towing, and I was pissed because I didn't get this idiot fired. They didn't fire this idiot, but they fired me. I was even more mad. But I wasn't going to waste any more energy on it because I didn't work there anymore, and I was working for a real ghetto ass company after that, and having to fight to stay alive and make enough cars to make any money. But the silver lining on that cloud is somebody else got him. Somebody else got there and after me, and this is so funny because we all kind of knew about it. There was a there was this old gal that worked up there as a dispatcher. Her name was Linda, I think, and old Linda she was a healthy gal. She's a big old gal. I mean, I like a thick girl, but this gal was beyond thick. She's kind of built like a walrus. Kind of looked like one in the face too. And we all kind of knew old Darren was sweet on Linda. They had something going on. None of us really wanted to think about it too much because it's kind of gross. They weren't. One of them was very attractive people. Wasn't something you wanted to waste much energy on. Well, that dude that had trained me at BRC, he brought a little pickup in there. He towed a little pickup in there, and Darren hit it with the truck and lied up and down, and it wasn't in a place where they could see with the cameras. And this old dude got shorted out a bunch of money because Darren did a bunch of damage to his little S10 and lied about it. And this old dude, we all kind of knew. So the deal was, Linda worked there at nights as a dispatcher for like 4 or 5 hours every night. But then during the day, there was a little, right on the corner down the street from the, from the tow lot, there was an Easy Mart. And old Linda worked at the Easy Mart during the day. And what old boy figured out was around lunchtime every day, when it come time for Darren to take his lunch, he wasn't supposed to drive the company truck off the lot, but because he didn't have a vehicle, he'd take that company truck and he'd roll down there to the Easy Mart. And apparently, old Linda was closing up the store for 30 or 40 minutes right after lunchtime. And they was going back in the stock room, and Darren was he was getting him some walrus love. So the guy that taught me all this stuff, I really think his name was Kenneth. I can't remember. Kevin. His name was Kevin. Real nice, rule player kind of guy. But old Darren had screwed him pretty bad, and he was hot. So they all had kind of figured out old Darren was going down there at lunchtime and screwing this old gal at the Easy Mart, and Kevin decided he's going to do something about it. So Kevin was friends with one of the other guys that worked at the Easy Mart, because we all hung out at that store. It's where we bought our gas and our cigarettes, all that kind of stuff. And there was a little Persian dude that worked there at the Easy Mart, and then there was this other old white dude that worked at the Easy Mart. And Kevin's kind of friends with that guy, and he'd been talking to him. He said, "I really won't catch this dude in the act, and don't know how to do it." The guy said, "Well, I'll tell you what I do. I'll just give you my key." He said, owner likes her. If I say anything about it, he's going to think I'm just being a prick. But he said, "I'll give you the key, and you should just come open up the Easy Mart because what she would do is she would lock the door, put a little close sign up, and then they would run back off. And it wasn't a super busy store. It was mostly us, some of the neighborhood people. So Kevin goes there at lunchtime one day, and sure enough, there's the company truck sitting there parked behind the gas station. And Kevin goes in there, unlocks the front door, and turns the close side around to open. Sure enough, some customers show up and go in the store. What do they find? They hear some noise, go to the back, go down past the slushies to the back room, the stock room. There's no Darren sodomizing the walrus in the stock room. After that, we called it the easy fart. Well, of course, the dude fires Linda. Of course, word gets back to BRC. They find out he's been taking the company truck off property. They fire Darren and everybody gets fired over that damn deal. And nobody laughed harder than I did because I was still mad at him about that damn Mercury Cougar I never got to even drive. And money I spent on that carburetor. I was still hot at old Darren about that. I still thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Got caught at the easy fart. Anyway, I don't bury me well now. I hope him and the walrus got together and had a beautiful life after that, and put out some dumbass little kids. I'm sure people like that always breed like crazy. They probably got 5 kids and a bunch of grandkids by now. I'm sure. Oh, let's wrap it up there for the day. Let's do some testimonials, if you will. And I am prepared. Look at me, baby. Look at Mr. Preparedness. Oh, they're even in the size I can see them. Some testimonials, if you will. This is comments from last week's episode, which was the episode about my buddy Jim Miller and his 92 Dodge Caravan. At Matthew Black -0. My son has been after me to do more riding again ever since I upgraded his bike recently. Last week I broke down and ordered new tubes, tires, and rim strips. I had no idea you were dropping this episode, which was perfectly timed and motivated me to get the new parts on the old Panasonic road bike. As someone who came from a similar background and learned the Church of Internal Combustion in similar fashion, I got hooked with the first episode and haven't missed one. As always, I appreciate the weekly episodes. Keep them coming. Hey, thank you, buddy. And man, I told you this in comments, but I would love, man, if you send me. Panasonic's made a good bicycle, dude. Them old Panasonic road bikes are bad to the bone. And I've actually been working on my bike. I did some work on it, and we're getting a little closer to being road ready. The other thing is, I'm taking the other bike. I had a Trek that belonged to my wife, but she didn't really like to ride it that much, and I'm fixing it up so my oldest kid can start riding with me. And so I think maybe have me a little ride partner. I actually talked to my brother Joey. He's getting his bike back in shape. I think we might all start riding together again. So that's awesome to hear, man. Good timing. Hell yeah, dude. Thanks for the compliment too. At Eva Bargo 379 or Eva Bargo maybe. Maybe you've already gotten past this point in your search for Jim in the shop, but maybe it will help someone else. The internet sucks these days, and our search results are clogged with garbage. Could be a time when a local library would be a better resource. They've got directories and stuff from that time on paper. One more thing: was Jim/James his government name, or did he have a different one he never liked using? Man, Eva, you are 100% right. Trying to research anything like that on the internet, there's so much sponsored and so much ads and bull crap and paywall stuff that, like, get to the resource. Like 10 years ago, you could find things on the internet better than you can now. It's not supposed to be getting worse, but somehow it is. And I think you're right about the local library. That's actually probably a better resource for that sort of thing. Houston's a pretty big metropolitan, so I don't know what the local library is that area. And I don't. That area is about an hour away from me now, so I don't get to go over there. But I've decided I am. Somebody actually reached out to me that has some resources to help me look this up a little better in email. Also, if you'd ever like to email the show, jwlcomedy@gmail.com. That goes to my manager, but they'll forward me along, especially stuff pertaining to the wrecking yard, because there's just limited ways you guys can get a hold of me. So jwlcomedy@gmail.com if you ever want to write the wrecking yard an email. I love emails. I love hearing from you guys. But somebody reached out to me. I believe he's an attorney, and he thinks he might have some resources to help me find this out. I haven't got to respond to him yet. It's been kind of a busy week. I don't know, but I don't think you're wrong about the local library being a good resource on that. I think you're probably dead on right. I tried to get on the funeral homes uh, website. The problem is that cemetery's been bought a couple times since Jim passed, and their online records are not really. They just pretty much go back like 4 or 5 years. So I think I would have to go over there in person and spend some time perusing whatever written records they have, or go around if they'll even let me do that, or go around just hunting through the cemetery, see if I can find his headstone. And my memory's pretty hazy since then, so I don't even know if I have a clue where I would start looking. But I once searched a whole cemetery in Tulsa one time until I found Sam Kinnison's gravestone, and until I found Leon Russell's gravestone. So I know I got it in me. I go over there and hunt. I don't know. The problem is with Jim is, I was 18-year-old. I don't know if his name was James really, or if his name was Jim to begin with. I don't know. I just, all I knew him as was Jim Miller, which unfortunately his name might as well be Adam Smith, because there's a lot of Jim Millers in this country. In fact, there's a whole lot of Jim Millers that died at the same time he died in Houston, you know. But I knew him as Jim Miller. I'm almost 100% sure he was an Air Force veteran. And all I do know is that he owned West Oaks Bicycle Shop over in Alief, Texas, and him and his wife lived in Alief, Texas at that time. I sadly cannot even remember her name. She was a real sweet lady. I didn't spend a lot of time around her, but she was a sweet lady, but I can't remember her name. But that's unfortunately all I know him as. Like I said, it's like he's like, oh, I'm looking for my long lost cousin Adam Smith, and good luck, bro. Good luck. You know. Um, but I think you're 100% right on the library being a better resource, because at least then you could look up obituaries and old newspapers and stuff like that. At Sparks Gaming Co. Oh, a gamer. I like that. Hello, sir. I love your comedy. I found your podcast early on. I have loved every episode thus far. This one today brought up a whole lot of memories that were buried by my past. I'm working on my testimony for my recovery, and I was struggling to find that light in the storm. I had completely forgotten all the freedom my bike gave me. Much love to you, brother. Thank you for everything you do. Man, thank you. Thank you. And if I can be a positive person in your recovery, I gladly step into that role. I hope things continue to get better for you, Ben. And I know about struggling to find that light. I know about struggling to find the things that make you feel like yourself again. Honestly, and you're not kidding about the freedom bike. I don't really mess with motorcycles anymore. I got rid of my motorcycles after my kids were born, because I just kind of, in my mind, yes, motorcycling can be dangerous if you're reckless and stupid, of course, but motorcycling can also be dangerous because other people not paying attention. And I felt like I owed it to my kids to get them at least 18 without doing something that could get me killed any day of the week on the streets. And then when my kids both hit 18 and I feel like they can take care of themselves, and feel like I have at least given them a solid foundation, I might get me another motorcycle. But I just decided after my kids were born, I wasn't going to do that, take a chance of leaving them without a daddy. Wish I had taken the same sort of approach to eating and my health, but I didn't. But I'm working on it now. But anything I could do to make sure I was going to be around for them for at least that duration, then, maybe if I want to get me another motorcycle, then I'll look into get me another motorcycle. But the great thing about the bicycle is when I bought my bicycle after my mom died, started riding that bicycle after she passed, it was that it gave me that feeling. There's something about being on two wheels with wind on your face and running down the road. There's something about the grace behind steering something on two wheels, the lean. It's not just turning a wheel and hoping everything mechanical works right. It's a full body reaction. It's a guide. It's a dance to make a two-wheeled vehicle operate under your control. I'm sure some people would argue the same thing about horses. I don't believe them because horses are the devil. But when I first started riding that bike again, it gave me that thing I missed about riding motorcycles back. It gave me that feeling again. I'm looking forward to getting on my bike again because I don't get many periods in my life where I get to feel fast or graceful. And being on a bicycle makes you feel fast and graceful, especially once you're accustomed to your bike and you get that. So, man, and in the same way, when you were a kid, it was your first taste of freedom. It was like when you got your first car, it was your first taste of freedom. And that bicycle, especially during that time period of my life, really helped me a lot. And one of my favorite things to do was go ride bikes with my brother. And I'm looking forward to being able to do that again. I am almost at my target weight. I'm so close. I'm like a week or two away, if I keep going at the rate I am, be at my target weight where I feel comfortable getting back on my bicycle and not being too heavy for it again. And I'm feeling better stamina wise and health wise. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to having that freedom back myself, brother. Looking forward to having that grace and speed and feel that wind on my face. I've had a bunch of head injuries, so I got to wear a helmet, and I hate it. But one of these days, I'm hoping I'm gonna find a helmet that doesn't make me look like I have a giant mushroom on my head. I hate bicycle helmets. They're just, oh, you just never feel like more of a dork wearing a bicycle helmet. But if you got me head injuries and brain injuries, you got to take a little care. So I got to wear a helmet. I have been watching these ads for this helmet you wear that's like a neck collar or something. It's kind of like it goes around your neck and it inflates and transforms into an inflatable helmet. But that also kind of worry, like I worry that inflatable helmet might bounce wrong and break your neck. I don't know. But I've been watching all the studies about it. I've been watching all the advertising about them and showing them work and accident related stuff. And people are pretty excited about them. There's a couple different companies making them, so now some of the costs have come down. Not that I want to. That's not where I don't go looking for a deal on safety stuff. That's like shopping for a bargain on eye surgery. That's not where you shop for a bargain. So, but I'm just saying overall the price on those kind of setups have come down. But I'm gonna have to find something to make me trust them, or maybe just find a helmet that fits my big old head right and doesn't make me feel like such a dork wearing it. But I always feel like some kind of doofus with a bike helmet on. But I am looking forward to getting back to riding. Thank you for writing in the show. And like I said, if you guys don't want to comment on YouTube, I of course always love your comments, and it gives me something to read as the week progresses. And I love checking in with you guys. But you can also write me at jwlcomedy@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out our sponsors. All right, that's our testimonials. Our testimonials for the week. Let me blow this back up so I can see what I'm looking at. Whew. There's nothing worse than the one that got away, right? The one that got away is the one that keeps you wondering all your life. I don't have any ones that got away when it comes to women. I've got ones that I'm so glad they got away. Or glad one I got ones I'm glad I got away from, but don't got any. But I have a couple cars, a couple ones that got away in cars, and that Mercury Cougar. I often still think every once in a while I'll see something about a Mercury Cougar, or I'll see somebody just submitted me a picture one for car astrology, and it's a beautiful XR-7, and it's boy, it made me think about that old metallic green Mercury Cougar. How much I wanted that car. Nothing worse than unfinished aspirations. You know what I mean? I ain't too mad about it these days. It's because honestly, at that chaotic period of my life, I was blowing and going and having myself a good old time. That car probably would have ended up wrecked or rusting away in Leverage Chapel, Texas, in my family's property, or being sold off or stolen or something. The likelihood I would still have that car today would be slim to none. And if I'm being 100% honest with me, the likelihood I would have ever got that car back in good shape at that time period of my life, probably pretty slim to none. But still laughed when I heard the Easy Fart story and about all them getting fired over it because I was still mad about that $20 in that Mercury Cougar. $20 is a little more money back in than it is today. Hope you guys are doing well, man. Thank you for sharing your Sunday with me. I love you for it. You know, I tell you guys, I'm rooting for you every week. I am rooting for you. I want to see you succeed. Don't waste too much energy on the mean people in life. Don't waste too much energy on the dumb people in life that are doing nothing to drag you down. Don't waste too much energy on politics and stupidity. That shit's all a waste of time. Waste your energy on your family. Waste your energy on your loved ones. Waste your energy on your passions, because then it's not a waste. If you spend your time fulfilling your dreams and fulfilling the things you want, it's not a waste. It doesn't matter if you make it or not. It's not a waste because you had the balls to go out there and go after it. Not everybody does. A lot of people live in a prison of their own making their entire life and jeer and laugh at those of us who are not afraid to take the chance and go for it. But they will never have the life those of us that take the chance have. They will never have the opportunities, nor the experiences, nor the memories, and all the great stories. And I've got a lot of stories. Some of them about loss, some of them about winning. Way less of them about winning as they are about loss, but who gives a shit? I got to live the experience and get the stories. And I'm still collecting stories at 47 years old. 48's right around the corner. It's coming up in July. Wonder how many more stories I have by 48. We'll just see. I'm still collecting them on a daily basis. I'm rooting for you. I got your back. And y'all root for me too, and I sincerely appreciate that. I sincerely appreciate you giving me your time on a Sunday. I sincerely appreciate you guys tuning in to Truck Astrology and all the things you watch that I make. And I know I make a lot of weird stuff that not everybody's into, but I appreciate those of you that tune in for that too. I am feeling better than I have felt in a long time. And I'm sure it probably shows on my face. I'm a pretty easy open book to read. And I hope some of you guys are doing better than you were when we started this experiment. My Lord, can y'all hear that thunder? We got us a gully washer coming in. I've been feeling it in my back all day. I had a feeling it's coming. That's why I did that yard work yesterday. My back was swollen up. I was like, boy, I better get that yard cut. But it is coming down now. Heck yeah. I don't know if you can see my monstrous brush pile back there. I got to burn. Guess the fire ban will be over after a little bit of good rain. As always, I'm JW, and I love you. I'll see you guys next week, and be safety. Crazy about Mercury. Might give me a Mercury one of these days. Boy, that'd be high, high feeling good.